Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Purnima Sharma, and on behalf of Governance Now, India's premier publication on public policy and governance, I welcome you all to the Digital Transformation Summit 2021. As we all know that COVID-19 pandemic has impacted almost every section of our society and also posed massive challenge before the healthcare system of our country. And this situation has forced us to bring in major digital transformation across all sections of our society, in the economy also. Almost all sectors of the economy have adopted digital innovation in a major way in their day-to-day operations. The concept of Digital India began with the idea of creating an alternative for a seamless and digitized method of operations. It soon gained momentum and grew into a nationwide campaign. In a bid to identify the best and next practices of Digital India, Governance Now presents the 4th Digital Transformation Summit and Awards 2021. The summit will have some very interesting discussions on how digital technologies have been adopted at various levels in the government organizations and agencies, their impact, and the way forward. We welcome you all to join this prestigious platform and be part of an excellent discussion session. We'll have many sessions, in fact. So we'll play a very small video to showcase what all we are going to present in this day-long summit. Please have a look.
ನೀವು ಏನನ್ನು ಸೇವಿಸುವಿರೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಆಗುವಿರಿ ಎಂದು ಜನರು ಹೇಳುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ആഹാരവನ್ನೇ ഔഷധിയನ್ನಾಗಿಸಿ.
കൊറോണ മെഡിസിൻ കേപ്പിനിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഈ കോൾ ടെലിസ്ക്രീനിലേക്കായി ഉപയോഗിക്കാം. നിങ്ങളുടെ കോൾ പൂർത്തിയായി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ കേസ് അവലോകനം ചെയ്ത ശേഷം ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഡോക്ടർമാർ നിങ്ങളെ സമീപിക്കുന്നതായിരിക്കും.
So welcome back. Now I would request Sri Kailashnath Adhikari, Managing Director, Governance Now, Sri Adhikari Brothers Group, to kindly deliver his welcome address. Please welcome Sri Kailashnath Adhikari.
Thank you so much, Purnima. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 4th Digital Transformation Summit by Governance Now. A very warm welcome to you all. As we organize and are about to host a day-long discussion on how digitally empowered our nation has become in the past half decade, I'd like to recall those days, about 19 months ago, when meeting face-to-face and physically meant the crux of all businesses. However, with the COVID-19 pandemic situation aggravating and causing havoc from the onset of April 2020, leading to certain norms such as social distancing became key. It had to be strengthened. Today, most of our dealings, whether at a professional or personal level, have got transformed digitally. Even so, that marriages were happening on Zoom. Starting from availing government services to utility services or for conducting professional dealings, we are now dependent on the internet and the web and the digital platforms so much. With the Government of India's Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology Department taking Digital India campaign on a mission mode, bringing in policies and executing them end to end, the campaign has been instrumental in taking connectivity to the last mile with better technological innovations. Besides, the central government, also our state governments are doing an excellent job of digitizing government operation and mechanisms on a full scale. One of the greatest examples of how Digital India has empowered us and in a nation of 1.4 billion people is the CoWIN platform. We also how that vaccinations are the only way forward if we want to beat the pandemic in a way. Whereas most of the developed nations are still relying on handwritten vaccine certificates, India, as well as the entire department, has transformed itself so beautifully with the help of digital technologies, so that at the prick of a needle of the vaccine, your COVID certificate, digital COVID certificate, gets generated, and it is stored for your easy reference. Today, we have some very interesting discussion panels focusing on IT innovation, implementation across domains of smart cities, security, a very important area, cloud and infrastructure, healthcare, so to say, among others, which I'm sure to zero down on some of the best initiatives across the nation. Without making further delay, I open the forum today for deep, intriguing conversations and deliberations, followed by an award ceremony at the end of the day. I look forward to being with you all on today's platform. And with that, I welcome you all on the 4th edition of Digital Transformation Summit and Awards by Governance Now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kailashnath Adhikari, for your welcome address. And moving forward to the inaugural session of the day, Digital Transformation in Public Sector, I welcome our eminent panelist. May I now request Dr. Neeta Verma, Director General, NIC, to kindly share her views on this platform. Please welcome Dr. Neeta Verma, DG, NIC.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this inaugural session. It's indeed a pleasure talking to you today morning. See, digital technologies are influencing our lives in many ways. It is influencing the way we work, the way we live. We do our online procurements for day-to-day needs, the way we travel, entertain, or even handle our finances. This phenomena in urban India, we have been witnessing for some years now, but the COVID has increased the adoption of this phenomena or these digital technologies from those young professionals and millennials to across all age groups, from children going to primary schools to senior citizens trying to be connected with their families. Everybody has used digital technologies, and it is even post-COVID, the new normal, it is becoming the way of life for everyone. The revolution of broadband and mobile network in India under Digital India program and further COVID has spread this influence of digital technologies from urban India to rural India, thus connecting citizens across length and breadth of the country to this fold of digital platform. And we have all witnessed during COVID how we have used these platforms for telemedicine, tele-education for schools, and also tele-law and many other such platforms, which has even video conferencing platforms, which really kept us connected in all those unprecedented times and enable us to continue our businesses or our work as it was needed. And therefore, the people who were digitally enabled, who had access to digital technologies, were at an advantage stage. We have particularly seen this in the small and medium enterprises, where the businesses which were not digitally enabled really felt a kind of disruption during that period. This whole ecosystem in the country has opened up a lot of opportunity for the government to be able to directly connect with its citizen, and which is very pertinent in a democratic country like ours. National Informatics Center, as you know, we've been working with our 800 offices across India with government at various levels, at central government, across all three pillars, from executive to legislature to judiciary. We've been working with state governments and then district administrations. We have office in every district of India. Through these offices and through our dynamic NIC teams, we have been building IT solutions to take care of various needs or to support various programs of the government. We've also built a very robust ICT infrastructure, which spans across data centers, cloud, messaging, GIS, to video conferencing, which has been the lifeline of government during management of COVID, and it's being provisioned to government entities across the countries. During this time, while one side we have built this national level platforms for the programs like Swachh Bharat Mission, MG Narega, fertilizer subsidy, PM Kisan, Jeevan Praman, One Nation, One Ration Card has been a recent entry. On the other side, because we could sense that with this new appreciation and new adoption of digital technologies, which is an opportunity out of this adversity caused by pandemic, there'll be a lot of new demand coming up. And, and so a lot of organizations, small entities within government outfits in district, sub-district levels, even in the state governments would want to go digital, would like to transform themselves into a digital entity. And to support them, we have converted some of our solutions, the popularly used solutions, into products. Things like e-office, which basically converts you into office to almost paperless kind of a office, to e-procurement, which takes care of e-HRMS, take care of your human resource management, e-reception, take care of your receptions and visitors who are visiting. Then you have e-auction kind of a platform, e-hospital. So these are the solutions to which we have built products. And I'm really happy to tell you that many of these solutions are today being used by hundreds of entities across government entities across central, state, and even public sector units. And some of these products are being now used by district collectorates also at the same time. Just because they are product, so we have been able to have a very high order of economy of scale, because being a product, we could easily offer it as a service, and with much less resources, we've been able to really cater to this vast pool of users whom we all are very proud of. In fact, they are the one who really encourage and excite us to further develop these products and evolve them as we go. In this next phase of digital transformation, when we all are moving, while digital automation and all has to be, there are few things which will become very pertinent, or which one has to keep in mind today when you're developing digital solutions, particularly when in the government space, focusing on the citizens across urban and rural. The one thing is, now from desktop or browser to mobile has become your primary channel of delivery of information, delivery of services to citizens. While even today, using a mobile browser, you'll be able to access information, websites, but you will see many a times they have not been designed with mobile in mind. And there's a lot of irritation and sometimes inconvenience in accessing. So today, when you're designing, your primary and the first medium of choice have to be mobile. You can do an exclusive mobile app to give a real wow experience to your citizen. So mobile is something which has to be paid a lot of attention to, because the citizens, this new set of your clients or citizens or customer, whatever you may call it, is going to connect with your IT system through these mobile technologies, because that is what they have in their hands. Even people in urban areas and these millennials, these citizens also prefer to use either mobile phones or their tablets and so on and so forth. So the whole interface has to be really paid attention to in the new generation of e-governance applications which we build. Another thing, because e-governance applications generally peak temporarily, and sometimes a small policy change can really bring a surge in your use. Therefore, you should really use more and more cloud kind of a technology instead of having a fixed infrastructure, because there are a lot of advantages, as you know, and it's particularly relevant in government's context, because here you have these temporal peaks with much less investment and with much less inconvenience to your customer. You can give that pleasant experience. It should not happen on the last day of the month, or the last day of filing a return, your site is crashing, or any other thing which is time bound. That particular day there is an inconvenience, and again people feel irritated. We are technology superpower. We have huge industry. We can always build solutions. It is just these small things which have to be kept in mind, and a selection of right technology and right design of application can really help you giving that wow experience to your citizens, and which is what is needed as we go forward. Another thing we have during COVID, you have seen not only in government while it's management of COVID, otherwise also you've seen a lot of use of data in management of an event, whether it is management of a quarantine center, management of a hospital, or management of a supply chain of essentials, or management of a country as a whole during COVID, whether lockdown or very other policy implementation. Data has driven policy has been really come to the forefront, and this phenomena, this appreciation is now getting replicated across other e-governance applications. So there's a lot of focus on data, and we are also at a test with the kind of cloud infrastructure, kind of network infrastructure, kind of optical fiber available in the country. We are in a position to get data in a real time. And with the prowess of cloud, we can process it in real time and feed back to the system so that we can take decisions and we can make changes as we go to something we call agile kind of a governance. That's another thing which we are going to see, and therefore whatever IT systems we build, we need to make sure that they all systems really share data to the right set of people. That should be a part of your basic design. Emerging technologies like AI, ML, particularly language technologies, also are going to play an important role. These emerging technologies can not only give a user a much better experience, they can also bring another order of inclusivity as far as Digital India is concerned. If you see, the initial tagline of Digital India was always an inclusive India. That's one of the important vision areas there, where everybody, irrespective of the language or technology or education barrier, should be able to access. Something which was not really foreseeable that how will we implement, but with this kind of developments in emerging technologies, especially text to speech, speech to text translations, and voice recognition and all those things, we are already seeing these applications in our day-to-day life in of various these voice assistants and things already available. These technologies should also be now brought into e-governance applications so that our citizens in the rural areas, to which we call at the bottom of the pyramid, can also be benefited. They already have a mobile device, fortunately. They have an affordable broadband access, which is largely available. And again, with the kind of focus of Prime Minister of broadband getting into 600,000 villages very soon, this whole connectivity will further strengthen. So with this ecosystem in place, it is right time to apply this emerging technologies to e-governance solutions to be able to give those intuitive, barrierless, accessible solutions to our citizens, irrespective of whether they have those, so to say, special abilities, or the citizens who have this challenge of education or technology or language per se. And today, as you will all agree, if you see in our real life, technology is available. We just need to really deploy it at large scale and deploy it more and more in Indian context, because our number of languages and dialects are huge. But though it is huge, it's a big problem to solve, but it is not something which cannot be solved. It's just we have to draw our attention to that. When you will start doing all of these things, see, what are we trying to do in all this? With putting all these technologies, we are trying to give our citizen a convenience, give our decision makers, give our policy makers an input into the whole thing. So what is we need to do? We need to bring in an interface where citizen using one interface by signing on only once should be able to access all government, all services which is available to him through his through government. And ideally, we should really aim of services available at one place, which is cutting across tiers of governance also, and technology enables us to do this in beautiful manner. So at one place, you could have a super app through which you get all government services, whether municipal corporation is giving this service, or whether state government is giving this service, or whether it's a central government. Going forward, you could even have other services, but this is something we could initially aim for. Another thing is, You need to really have these data-driven insights being generated into real times, which could be fed to the executive or to the people who are managing these large level programs whose budget goes to lakhs and lakhs of crores. If you could give them real time input into the monitoring and implementation, what's going good, what's not going good, and enable them to make mid-course corrections or changes into the scheme to make it more effective, is something will have a huge impact, because a lot of budget is being done and all is towards the welfare and upliftment of people. Even a minor change there can really touch the lives of millions of people. So that's another domain where we need to really focus on. And long-term analysis of this data can also feed into a policy making as we go. And therefore, this whole concept of agile policy making, agile governance, driven from the concept of agile development of software systems, is something really catching a lot of attention. And perhaps in this fast moving world, that's the need. Now, if you want a citizen to be given access from one place, or if you want the data to be data-driven insights, you really need to connect these systems. These systems which have been developed over time, but developed in silos, are doing a lot of great work in terms of delivery of services or management of a national level program. But to be able to deliver next generation of services powered by data insights, we need to connect these systems to enable them to exchange data with each other. Let me give you a small example. We register these vehicles, and this vehicle registration registry, which is a transport registry, which they call if they make their data accessible to the through a proper system of understanding and contracts and all, if this could be accessed by traffic cop on the road to issue a challan, the whole process of issuing the challan, we just scan the code and issue a challan. It can be used by PUCC centers for insurance, for issuing those PUCC certificates. You just have to connect to IoT device, capture the data, and the certificate can be generated. Insurance agencies can use this data. FASTag companies can use this data. E-way bill system can use this data. And you will be very happy to know that all of this have started happening as I'm speaking to you. Now see, if this e-way bill data and FASTag vehicle registration data and e-way bill data can be connected with invoice data, it can not only give a lot of convenience to the small and medium business in the country, it can also generate a lot of insights which could be of great help to the businesses themselves. It can also help government in doing its monitoring and really not penalizing the one who's really doing its whole business into a right sense. So, and therefore, with this philosophy, with this e-way bill introduction, government has abolished check post across these highways, and it is all now generated through these systems, and only the kind of leads generated from these systems that people are on a random basis is being kind of scanned or kind of stopped on this. But for large population, this has really made the whole transportation time from X to Y has considerably reduced, because you don't have to really stop on one check post to other post and get into that queue to get it tested and cleared and so on and so forth. Similar example is for the schools. Let's say if you have a national school registry, which we already have in the name of UDICE, where each school and its complete attributes of 16 lakh plus schools is already built in. Now, if this school registry can be open to all IT systems across in this ecosystem, be it for a midday meal program of the government, for scholarship giving to the students, for teachers management, or for examination bodies who have to register these things. Every time you see, we have to fill that form again and again. And if we could open this registry to them in a responsible manner, there is no need to collect this data again. You only collect it once, And every time if you have to make any change, you only make change at the source. This will be a golden record for that entity. In fact, there are a lot of such core data elements which form the core of governance. If that could be done and then opened up to be used by all other systems, it can not only help us in giving those connected single point services to citizens, where they do not have to go to multiple offices to apply again and again. Application always can be connected from one to the other. Lot of such initiatives are being considered under ease of doing business also. This is also going to generate a data which will be of much higher quality, which will enable us to generate much powerful insights from these data. This can also be used to also do things like fraud detection modules, and to make sure that all those misuse or breaches of the system can also be minimized to great extent if all this data is connected. And how do you normally connect these things is through a technology called API. Government of India already has a policy called open API policy already in place, but I think today now it has become very, very critical, and therefore all these IT systems which are being developed now should have these APIs. You should have APIs to receive data, because today no IT system is existing in isolation. You're always connecting to take input from somebody, and you are connecting to share information with somebody, because it's all a connected ecosystem. And to support all these things, because when you create all these APIs and you're giving a direct access, they also pose a lot of cybersecurity challenges, because these are very powerful paths, and a misuse of these paths can sometimes land into data breaches. So to enable this all hyper-connected government or hyper-connected systems, we have set up a national API exchange at a national level, where any IT system hosted in our data centers, as you know, over 14,000 government IT systems are being hosted in our data centers across India. All these IT systems, government IT systems, when want to connect with each other, they can always connect with this national API exchange. The advantage is that you can publish and register yourself once on the API exchange, put in your terms of conditions under which you would like to use. Now, any entity who would like to use can connect. They can do that smart contract, which can again happen in electronic fashion, and start using this data. All that system of every time, getting to meet 10 times, and then specification sharing, that what information I'll share, what you will share, how will we share, all that the dialogue can be completely eliminated. Whole process now can happen online. Once organization has to only do what kind of terms and conditions they'll share data, with whom they will share data, and technically connect to this exchange. Then enabling others to share this data in the terms and conditions you have defined is something which this API exchange, which we call NAPEX or National API Exchange, can take place. And I feel with this kind of API exchange in place, and if all IT systems, not only the new IT systems, even the already existing digital systems which have really become at the core of governance, should also really upgrade themselves to be able to sharing data through API. Because believe me, at one point of time, today you may be in a position where you have to share your data. You will soon see a need where you need to take data from somewhere. And therefore, we all have to connect, because at the end, all of us are driven by a common vision of making life better for our citizens. And with that, we should all work together, connect, build this hyper-connected system to give that true super app to our citizens. One app and you access everything, all government services across its tiers at one place. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I wish conference a great success. Good day. Take care.
Thank you so much. Elaborate sharing your insights on this very, very important issue, very important subjects. And we are indeed honored to have you in this summit, in this virtual gathering. And now, Dr. Dinesh Kumar Tyagi, who is Managing Director, CSC E-Governance Services India Limited, Government of India, to kindly share his views
First of all, let me thank the organizers to invite me and share some thoughts on digital transformation, especially focusing on government systems. Before this, already Ms. Neeta, DG NIC, has already spoken and shared anything which has happened in government. Let me take a different perspective from the citizen perspective and also look into COVID. How does COVID really try and has been a challenge and opportunity? And is there an impact of COVID in trying and looking at differently things which are otherwise perceived in government and also in private sector for delivering services to citizens? One of the things which has happened over the years is that if you look at the first part, is every person in the village who is now being transferred to the money into his account. There are 80 crore people who got money into their account. One of the challenges for during the COVID time was for them to withdraw that money from the account. And after the 70 years of independence, we have only 40,000 rural branches of banks, of public sector banks in India. And there are 6 lakh villages. So it was a difficult job. Many of the banks were also not open. They were closed for some time during COVID time. So there is the technology which has evolved over a period of time in order to create digital financial transaction helped a great in that function. Whether it's Aadhaar enabled payment system of AAPS done by NPCI and others, and also the UPI and the QR code. These help people at least access basic financial services very close to the place where they live in. They don't have to go to a bank. And we have met many of the people, especially those old ones who get their pension, saying that for 2.5 years he is actually not gone to a bank branch because he can withdraw all the money through the assisted format, the access point which is available to him in a village, which try and help people get these services delivered digitally. APS is revolutionary. APS is very good because everybody's got an Aadhaar. I think one of the fundamental basis on which the real digital transformation in India is taking place is Aadhaar. Aadhaar has transformed our way of thinking. Aadhaar has also helped the service provider to try and design new product and meeting the expectations of the community, especially for those who live in rural India. And Aadhaar is also very easy in that sense, and therefore authentications are far more secure compared to many other format of delivered services to digital use. So one of the financial transactions that happened, these people during the difficult time of COVID has actually been able to access their money out of their accounts in the place where they live in. This has been a phenomenal change, and it has happened largely because of COVID, that the transformation and percolation of these services and acceptance of these services by the community has been of great speed. People now know that they don't have to go to the bank and stand in the queue. They can go to the nearest common service center and withdraw their money. The second thing which has happened other than the financial services is the healthcare. Healthcare, of course, has been not only COVID-related healthcare, but healthcare generally in rural India has been a challenge to meet because of the availability of doctors or paramedics or infrastructure support through existing systems, traditional system. A lot of talk on telemedicine and teleconsultation were happening before the COVID began. It was being done in some organization or to some extent, but there were no legal framework. COVID helps government to release the guidelines of telemedicine. So the first time the telemedicine became a way, a legally empowered phenomena in order to help community to access the patients to actually talk to the doctors through using either a video conferencing or a mobile phone. So this has happened because of COVID. So COVID really not only gave challenge, also an opportunity for us to look at things differently. And this is what has necessarily been done. There is a great work being done, and I do believe that rural India, the digital transformation for especially healthcare, in telemedicine, in diagnostic, and also in dispensation of medicine. Many of these now platforms which are now dispensing medicine has also come up, and they meet all the regulatory compliances in that sense, and therefore meet the requirements. So if we can create a digital diagnostic, a digital teleconsultation, and digital delivery of medicines then we can transform rural India. We can have access point created very close to the place of about 6 lakh villages do that part of the work. And they can connect to doctor either within the near periphery or a public health center, or to a doctor which is stationed in Delhi, Chennai, or Bangalore, or Calcutta. That is possible. But this has happened because the technology is now evolved and people are now trying assimilating this technology to meet their basic requirement of healthcare. That has happened. The third, of course, is regarding that the farmers' extension work. The traditional farmer extension work was also being done in that fashion, where the Krishi Vikas Kendras were doing extension work. This has own limitations. There were not many of them. There were only 700 across the country, almost one in one district. And the area is large. The COVID actually prevented the farmers to get access to the scientists for getting extension works done through the system. So what started was a tele-agriculture where all the scientists were connected to the common service center, which is assisted format, and the farmer can come and talk to the scientists through the nearby common service, which is almost available in every panchayat now. So all the panchayat people can do. So the extension work for farmers, which can relate to either growing a crop and getting advice on seed, quality of seed, or getting advice on pests which is being affected, or getting a medicine for what do that part of the work. That has also happened. And this has been a phenomenal success story for what has been done. Many scientists are now assimilated into their form to try and do advisory through teleconsultation. It helps win-win both. It helps both the farmer not traveling to kilometer distance. It also helps scientists schedule his day accordingly, wherever is the time free, they can give consultation to people in that sense. But it's a great work which has happened for teleconsultation. Similarly, for animals, as we talk about telemedicine for veterinary was not existing, and telemedicine of veterinary were also started because COVID time, not only the people were suffering, even the animals were suffering. There was no way to try and take the animal to a veterinary doctor and take an advice. So this telemedicine consultation for veterinary sciences also was started, and this has also been picked up slowly. And many of the people, there are many good stories of farmers who got their animals, advice on their animals for treatment, and also for enhancing their productivity if there are some problems happening in their feed habits or otherwise. So teleconsultation for animals, teleconsultation for farmers for extension work, and telemedicine for human beings has been all they were doing in piecemeal basis before the COVID, but the COVID accelerated the pace. COVID also helped in the community assimilating this as a part of the process of getting services done. Otherwise, it takes a normal long curve for people to bring for a physical medicine center to a telemedicine center. COVID has helped quite a lot in that sense to assimilate these new technology within the, especially in rural India. The last, of course, is that tele-litigation was started first time in India. I think first time in India, a pre-litigation advice, called tele-law, has been started where people in villages can now talk to an advocate online and get some advice, which has also been in this. I think within a short period of time when this scheme was started, 1.2 million people almost had got advice from the advocates. And this has helped quite a lot. This is also empowering communities in getting them enforcing their legal rights or whatever is required. So, and also solving their problems if the harassment, either by an agency or through other forms of social harassments, they can get this addressed by talking to an advocate. So everything has now become, in that sense, a tele format. And this has happened largely because of COVID. COVID has accelerated the pace of assimilating tele as a part of their life, both for farmers, their animals, the litigants who want to get their services done, and also for getting medical advice. In addition to this, one of the challenges which are happening during the time in the COVID was that in the urban area, when the shops were closed, people were able to place an order and somebody used to supply to them. There were platforms available where you can place an order for a good or essential commodity and it gets supplied to your house, even if the normal shops are closed. But there was nothing in rural India because this large e-commerce platform were not addressing the requirement of rural India. So what we as an organization started was a hyper-local e-commerce platform, and which actually creates value proposition for people where people locally can do everything digitally. They can place order to the real CSC, which is accessible to them. The CSC can then access and supply the commodities to them. And CSC also has a tool where they can do the procurement either through a distributor or locally through a digital format. So it became a hyper-local, and it is done phenomenal. Even within the period of about 1 year, we have done transactions of about 500 crores. And almost everything possible in the villages now being sold, supplied through this local. This is creating employment opportunity because large number of people actually, we don't call them courier boys, but we call them digital cadets. So digital cadets carry goods and services from the CSC to the customer as and when which requirements take place. So there's a phenomenal story of transformation happening around, and the government is supportive, because without the support of the government and the government rules and regulation being modified accordingly, it would not be possible to take it forward to such a large scale. It has happened, and I think we must thank the government for meeting the expectations of community and the challenges that COVID has thrown, and devising new technology and supporting them to address the concerns. It has been a great story, and it will go to a long way in trying and working out some more future roadmaps for what we can do. Logistic still continues to be a challenge. If we can try and create some logistic change, especially for rural India, it can transform the way we do it. We can actually procure goods and services from rural India, either from self-help group or handicrafts and handlooms, which are being produced by small women in the villages, and try and transport them to locations where there's a market existing. The market may not be there in the village where they produce it. Market may be in urban areas. Can we do an electronic intervention, an e-intervention, including logistic simplification, so that the intermediary cost get reduced, and the customer get it at an appropriate price, and the producer also is benefited because of large market access available to them. We have done some part of the work for agricultural commodities through our partners, and that is the reason why pineapples of Tripura was sold to Dubai, and lychee from Bihar was taken and sold in London. That has happened. But these are all technological innovations which have happened, and the farmers are getting a choice now what they want to sell, where to sell. There is a lot to be done in the farm sector. The FPO, the Farmer Producing Organization, if you can try and strengthen them and create one-stop shop for them, for the farmers, can be very transformative. We are making an effort. We already have about 2,000 FPOs done. We want to do one in every block, about 6,000 of them, where everything which a farmer needs. If you want seeds and fertilizer, they can be supplied by the same FPO. If you want advisory, which I told, there's the tele-advisory on the farm, he can be given to them. If you want the normal government scheme, PM Kisan Samman Nidhi, PM Fasal Bima Yojana, that also can be done with their own integrated one system. So all the government, or soil health card, all that can be supplied. Besides this, if you want an equipment leasing, so we can create an equipment leasing center with a small farmer, which is a small farmer, can't actually afford to have a large equipment for cultivation, he can get it on hire, and that is possible to do that. We are also now looking at creating a farm card, a card for each farmer, where he can get some kind of a working capital to meet his daily requirement through a bank, along with the bank. So if you get the financial support, and if he gets all the inputs which are required in order to try and do cultivation, and also is able to sell those outputs through an e-format, the FPOs can be a significant value addition for enhancing the productivity of the farmer and meeting these exigencies which normally happens, and the farm is not able to produce when there is an excess demand, excess supply. That is what will happen. So these areas are under consideration. And the last but the least is, of course, the education. There a lot of happened in the education format. We need to transform from a normal school system to a system where a person, even if there is one person in the village and he wants to study, can we do something where he can study in the village itself without going to a traditional school system? There will be no group or classroom system. And that is a possibility that is being done. Today, the IIT Mumbai courses are available to villages wherever they want to study these courses. We have the civil service examination. If a girl in a village wants to do, she can appear for preliminary examination mock test, and which are being produced. So everything possible in education can be done. In short and brief, See, if you can do DBT, what we call digital doctor, digital banker, and digital teacher, create in every village, all 6 lakh villages, can be a real transformation. And of course, the aspirations of the people that they can get every service close to their place where they live in without visiting either a government office or a bank can be phenomenal in terms of creating empowerment and inclusiveness. That's what is happening around. And you see, the government is putting a lot of work in achieving the same objectives. Our Honorable Prime Minister said, we will try and create a system where the service can be delivered in the hands of a citizen. And that is what is happening. That's the ultimate goal. And through that direction, a lot of effort has happened. New technology, new innovations, and new platforms are being designed in order to simplify life of common man. The idea of technology in government is to simplify the life of common man. How can we simplify the life of common man? And that is what is being taken forward. So wish you all the best, and I'm sure that many of your participants who are going to look at that, if they need something to be done in rural India, we will be willing to support them, since we now have 4.5 lakh access points across the country, one of the world's largest network, and we can help them. If it is saleable, then we can definitely help them either a goods or a service to be sold across in mutually agreed terms and conditions. That is a possibility. And we can create a lot of new entrepreneurship. These 4.5 lakh are digital entrepreneurs, employing about 4 people. So about 1.6 million people are now employed in the common service centers across the country. And it's a phenomenal story of women empowerment, because about 77,000 are run by women. So we hope that the country will get transformed under the present dispensation into a real digital world where everybody has an access to technology, education, health, close to the place where they live, and the quality that they want to access, which is accessible to other areas. Work from home, from villages, BharatNet will transform in that direction, and we should be able to transform even the pollution levels in urban areas, reduce the pressure on urban land if we can create good quality internet connectivity and power availability in villages, that people will love to live there and do that. Work from home has become a norm. It is not going to go away. Many other organizations will actually survive and continue to do work from home. And that is also an innovation which has happened due to COVID. So COVID, what people say COVID has actually thrown challenges, but COVID has also thrown new opportunities for us to address the concerns of common man. So thank you so much for inviting me. I wish you all the best for this workshop, and hope that all of you give inputs on what we can do further in trying simplifying life for the common man. Thank you so much.